Ride or die. I go hard in the paint, yeah, homie, I'm a saint.
Okay, so since I have you for some time before somebody else shows up, do you mind if I ask you a few questions about your own belief in Christianity?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so do you believe the Bible is inerrant, like it doesn't have any errors whatsoever?
So that's a big question. Let me give you a detailed answer after I answer my wife real quick.
Sure, go ahead.
So that depends on your definition of inerrant. So, for example, I don't believe that Jesus can contradict himself or that God can contradict himself. So, in that sense, I would say that's inerrant. But when you look at the Bible as a whole, there's elements that were written by God. There's elements that God said to put down, like those are the "Thus saith the Lord." There's elements of history written by Jewish people. Then there's the Gospels, which uh, have the interactions from these four different perspectives from different individuals who were around Jesus or Paul. And so I would say that when we're looking at the books, if I was to compare Bible to Quran, they're just too different. So the Bible is a history book. It's not a science book, but there's certain things like, for example, if you were to have, and I'll give you one that this was an interesting one. And one of the earlier documents that we have, it has a king as being 8 when he took control in 18. So if you
Hmm.
were to say, James, that violates inerrancy, and that's the definition that you're using, I would say, yeah, that particular document, the person who wrote down that age, was wrong, and he should have put down 18. But because we know that's a scribal error, it's not really an issue. I hope that answered your question.
So you mean that the core teachings are safe, and there might be some errors, but they're not to do with any core teachings of Christianity.
Yeah, and that, like, it depends on just how we're defining errors. Like, if you mean textual variants, if you want to classify those as errors, then yeah, you could say there's errors. But if you're willing to allow textual variants and other things that, like, we can formulate what is the gospel from the gospels, or if you're looking at a Q source, so it's weird in these kind of conversations because it comes down to definitional. Like, what does somebody have a problem with and what does someone else have a problem with? Like, I'm fine, for example, textual variants. Um,
Hmm.
it makes sense because it's not like it's not something controlled by a mad dictator. These are more genuine because these are real people who interacted with God, and they're dictating their interactions, and they're dictating in some cases things that God directly gave them to say.
Okay. Uh, okay. So I would agree that the error that you mentioned about the age of the king, it's insignificant in terms of any teachings we can get from it or whatnot. But why do you think? I mean, why do you think God would allow such things to enter into His book? Wouldn't it have been better if His book was like 100% even free of minor errors?
So first, we have to um, figure out why we would assume that God would send down a perfect book, or that God would send down a book that would be perfectly preserved, or a book with no um, contradictions. So, for example, if we're looking at the different conceptions of God through the Abrahamic religion, the Jewish perception and the Christian perception is that the Torah has been maintained, and the Christian perception is that the Gospels have been maintained. Now, the Islamic conception says that the Torah was not maintained, that the Gospels were not preserved. But in this third version, this Quran, God is clarifying everything and now preserving it. So I don't think that any religion has any right to say that God gave them a perfectly preserved revelation, especially if they're saying that there's scribal errors or there's a potentially influence of man on certain things. So I think that it's a bad claim to say that something is perfectly preserved directly from God, because I don't believe that that's how God works.
Right, but my question is that why not? I mean, it seems more plausible to me that if God would send down a book, any book, that it would be completely free of errors, even the minor ones that you mentioned. And if he intends it for everybody, then he would also be responsible in preserving it. Not that I'm saying that the Bible is not preserved, but I mean, you admitted to those minor imperfections, as you might say, in the Bible regarding the age and some other things. I think it's more plausible that a God would not do that than the fact that he would do that.
I
Why would
disagree.
he want to?
I disagree because when you're looking at God and you're looking at all the major religious conceptions of God, only two out of the three Abrahamic religions are making a claim that for the most part God's preserved His word. In Islam, though, they're making the claim that God didn't allow the Torah to be preserved. He didn't allow the gospel to be preserved. He, as a matter of fact, allowed corrupt versions of those texts to exist today, and he only decided for the third release, which was the Quran, to preserve that. So when we're looking at like this perfect preservation, I don't know why we would dictate that God would have to have a perfectly preserved text in his communication to us. I just don't see the logical necessity. But I think if you make that claim that God needs a perfectly preserved text, but with built in within your religion, you have indication that all the text before that was not perfectly preserved, I think that becomes a hole in that argument.
Okay, sure. Uh, and another thing I wanted to ask you was that do, do you use faith as a method to get to your belief in Christianity, or do you think that evidence alone is enough to convince anybody who's genuine?
That's a good question. I enjoy your questions because they're really well thought out. Um, so I believe that faith is a duality in its wording. So you have um, faith in the things you don't see, but the promises that God's given you, and that
Mm-hmm.
assurance of that hope. But then you also have faith that's built on evidence, faith that's built on um, concrete. So I would say that the Bible confirms my faith. I would say that nature and reality confirm my faith. But there are some things that I would use the secondary kind of faith for, as in I have hope in the resurrection of Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm. So what I mean is that uh, so there's this whole set of evidence, right? I mean, one person can see the evidence and rationally think that this evidence is enough to believe in Christianity, and one person can think that this evidence is not enough and rationally conclude that the evidence is not enough. So I guess the difference would be faith then between the two people, or do you think there's some other difference as well?
Well, there's also direct revelation. So in Christianity, we believe there's general revelation, and then we also believe that God directly reveals himself to people. We also believe that if you are if you already have a hardened heart, that God will give you over to that desire. So if I'm talking with somebody and they really don't want to know who God is and they really don't want to seek Him, God is going to turn them over to that. He's gonna give them everything they want. He's gonna give them the structure against Him they want. He's gonna give them the other group that they feel is better. He's gonna close off their heart to Him. He's gonna say, "All right, you want this? You take it, enjoy it because it's not perfect. It's not me." And so we do believe in special revelation as Christians, and we do believe that there are people who say they seek the truth, but they don't seek the truth. And some people have convinced themselves that what they believe is true, even though it's false, and they do it because of a comfort for them.
Okay. And I guess my last question for right now is that uh, what would it take for you to change your mind about Christianity or consider it to be false?
That's a great question. You would have to show me that one of the other competing worldviews um, has better substantiation for its claims than Christianity. But I'll just go for example. When I look at the Jewish texts and I talk to them, I see that the rabbinic tradition has actually changed, like meaning and interpretation, and they're not shy about it. You can go to the books and see differing opinions by rabbis to where their theology has greatly changed from its initial concepts 2,000 years ago. And then when I look at the other Abrahamic religion, besides Christianity, Islam, I see and I hear things like the perfect preservation of the Quran. But then when I
Hmm.
look into the Quran, I see that there are textual variants, there are variant readings. There are some that say like interpret I will or they will. Well, I will or they will are very different things. If you're trying to say that there's that he's saying I will and they will, then you have to say that then the one Quran you have in your hand is not a complete Quran. And so the only way you can interact with the complete Quran is to have all the variations in front of you and to go through them. That starts running into all kinds of other problems and red flags. And then when Fareed Responds was on with me on the James is Tired Club, he said um, that even within the direct one version of the Quran, not going to others, that Moses seems to sometimes contradict um, himself, like in different things he says. But then it gets worse when you start looking into all those variations and you start seeing this speech get more corrupt. So I think for Farid Responds, without me strawmanning him, I think he was landing on that it was poetic in nature and that it was not necessarily a direct quote from Moses. But then I have other problems with that because it says it's quoting Moses or it says it's quoting Pharaoh. So these are just different things that I start looking at other religions and I'm like from what you are telling me when I examine these claims, it doesn't hold water. So if a Muslim tells me, for example, that I should throw out the Quran if I don't believe it's perfectly preserved or has errors, then I'm just doing what I've been told to do, and not literally throwing it in the trash. I don't believe people should be doing that kind of antagonistic behavior. Now, let me caveat that, then I'll get back to the point. So, while I don't believe people should be doing that, I also don't think that people should be punished or put to death or threatened because they do this. I think that people just need to realize that other people are going to disagree and that people are going to not like others' religions. But back to the main point, it's just about examining the structure. And you were asking me what would change my mind. So it would have to be compelling evidence from one of the other religions that was so strong that when I checked it out, I couldn't deny it, then it would put me in a position where this is a really solid, substantial claim, and I would have to consider it. But I don't believe I've been presented that yet.
Okay, so my internet is almost about to run out. So if I just log out, just know that that's why I logged out. But until it goes, I'll keep pushing this a bit further. Uh, so you said that you would require some sort of evidence that was so convincing that it becomes undeniable. Like you're searching for 100% certainty, and I don't think that. Do you think that's a good thing to search for 100% certainty? I don't think such a thing is possible in anything.
So it's not that I'm saying 100% certainty. Although I believe that I have 100% certainty that Jesus Christ is God and that the crucifixion, resurrection, I'm 100% certain that happened. Um, but you would have to substantially start, like, for example, um, a great thing that a Muslim could do is if they could prove to me that there was zero chance that Jesus Christ was ever crucified, that would be something substantial for me to take a pause and say, hold on a minute. That means that either we're still waiting for the Messiah, like the Jewish conception said, or Jesus was the Messiah, and it's closer to what the Islamic conception was. But that would be something that would make me take pause. But I would say the reason why I'm looking for more certainty in a counterclaim is that I don't believe that there's any issue with Christianity in the sense um, it's the truth, the way, and so I would need something substantially more than what I have now to consider rejecting it.
Okay, that sounds fair. Hmm.
These are some good questions. I may actually sometimes I post these replay clips on my YouTube channel. I may post this one because I think you asked some really good questions that other people need to hear.
Sure, I don't mind.
And I'm also going to leave this replay up too because I think whenever you come in, you ask genuine questions. I don't ever feel like there's malice intent behind you or that you're trying to got somebody. You're genuinely curious about what somebody's view is and you even give good pushback. So thank you for that.
Thanks, James. Thanks for that.
Have you I know last time we had talked, you were a little bit on the fence about where you were on religious beliefs. What do you think you're at now? Do you think you're um, more of a Muslim now, or do you think you're not a Muslim, or are you still kind of thinking about it?
No, no. I was an atheist last time that we talked, and I still am.
Gotcha. Because I see that you seem to have a very big connection with Islam. Do you have a lot of Muslim family?
Yeah, I do, and I myself used to be a Muslim for most of my life, so that's why I'm interested in it.
That makes sense. Um, that's why I'm getting that impression for sure. No, and like I said, you ask really good questions. You think through these things. Um, and then, do you have any other questions you want to throw out before your internet dies?
No, I think that's about all of them for now. But if I get some really good question, I'll be sure to ask it.
No, thank you.
I go hard in the paint, yeah, homie, I'm a saint.